Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox and Matt Kelly back with another episode of the award winning Compliance Into the Weeds. Welcome back, Matt.
Hello, Tom. Good to be here.
Matt, we had two of the first AI washing enforcement actions from the SEC last week, and I know that caught your attention. You want to tell us a little bit about those, and maybe we can explore what it might mean for the compliance professional?
Sure. Yes. So this happened last week. These were the first cases of AI washing brought by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And for those who do not know, AI washing is the admittedly horrendous phrase that the SEC has cooked up for making misleading statements to investors about how you use AI in your business operations. This, I think, descends from greenwashing, a previous enforcement fad at the SEC, where you made misleading statements about how environmentally conscious you were. I guess the washing part has now stuck. I wish that somebody had come up with a better name, but I'm pretty sure that SEC Chairman Gary Gensler came up with AI washing. And now we have two cases. The SEC has been saying for a while that it would be bringing AI washing cases to the enforcement realm, and here we are. They are both investment advisory firms. One is a company called Global Predictions, which is a internet-based investment advisory firm. I think that is headquartered in San Francisco. The other is Delphia USA. They are the US subsidiary of an investment firm up in Toronto. And both of them, at the same time, settled charges that they had been making misleading statements to not to their investors, but to their would-be customers who would then use their services to make online investing decisions. They made misleading statements to their would-be customers about how they used AI. Both the companies basically said that they do use AI when in fact they did not. That's the washing part, and that is pretty cut and dried. I think one of them said that they were the first AI approved or registered investment firm out there, and that's not a thing yet. Nobody's AI registered at all or registered to be AI. Um, Another one had said that, oh, yes. Okay. So it was Global Predictions. Here I have it, that they were the world's first regulated AI financial advisor. And yeah, that's not real. Um, and then the SEC went and looked at Global Predictions, which, as the SEC said, with its usual detached understatement, Global Predictions could not produce documents to substantiate this claim. And then there was another one with Delphia, which basically just said that it puts its collective data to work, the data that it gathers to help you, the investing customer there. We put our collective data to work to make our artificial intelligence smarter so we can predict which companies and trends are about to make it big. So there is a certain Wolf of Wall Street air to both of these companies. And then Delphia, of course, didn't actually have any artificial intelligence it was using either, according to the SEC. So that is misleading. You cannot say that to would-be customers. And it wound up that Delphia paid, let me see if I have the amounts here. Delphia paid $225,000 in a civil penalty. Global Predictions paid a penalty of $175,000, and both of them were told to knock it off. So that is our first enforcement action. We can talk about what this means because it means more than just these two cuckoo fly-by-night investment firms, I guess. But that's what actually happened.
Well, Matt, I was struck by the words of Gary Gensler back in December when he said, "Don't do it. You shouldn't greenwash and you shouldn't AI wash." And both of these firms did AI wash or make claims that they couldn't back up and they weren't engaged in. Is this really different than not even greenwashing, but really any other claim from an investment firm about their sophistication capabilities or other matters that would influence a customer?
Well, no. And we should caution here that I specifically want to talk about financial advisory firms and investment advisory firms. I'll get back to everybody else out there, all of the publicly traded companies in a bit. But for these firms that, like I said, have this certain Wolf of Wall Street air to them or boiler room air to them, um, they've been doing this kind of thing for years. 4 or 5 years ago, it was crypto. You put the word crypto in your advertisements and circulars to would-be customers, and suddenly everybody's in love with you and you're doing more business. And then it was greenwashing because everybody's making ESG investments. And now they're using AI to come up with the best possible investment decisions for you. And a lot of these online investment firms, like, they're just not doing that. I don't care if it's crypto or greenwashing or AI washing or whatever sort of washing is going to come along by 2028 or so. A lot of these very, small over the counter firms here, like, we have no idea what they're really doing. The SEC does rightly see that this could be a problem. They moved to head this off at the pass and intercept these firms before this AI washing gets out of hand. I think we will see more such enforcement in the future, but we should make a clear distinction between the investment advisory firms out there that might be using AI as a tool to promote themselves and what they're disclosing about that versus large companies out there who are in any number of non-financial sectors who might be disclosing AI risks and how they are trying to handle AI risks. And that is a very different sort of misleading statement concern that the rest of the world needs to consider here. And that, I think, is the big point for most compliance listeners who probably are not at investment advisory firms. Even you at a non financial company, you do need to watch out about the statements your company is making about AI. And you could wind up still in a different form of AI washing enforcement, but it's still AI washing enforcement.
Well, and you really paired, together what I wanted to try to get us to, which is the assessment, management, monitoring, and oversight of risk, and that disclosure by a company paired with this enforcement action. I think we both thought the SEC was serious when they said that they would go after companies for this, and that the Department of Justice said that somehow you use AI that will enhance potentially a penalty they might assess or ask a jury for. But it's kinda stuck in the middle are compliance officers. And I know you've had conversations with some of our brethren around some of the difficulties they see in this. Maybe we could sort of pivot to that and see if this case from the SEC might give us any insights as to what a compliance officer might start thinking about.
Well, I would kind of compare it to disclosures a company makes. And generally, we're going to be talking about publicly traded companies here. But you would be making disclosures about risks in your annual report or in your quarterly reports, where you'll say, well, we have this type of risk, and these are the steps that we're taking to control it. Um, I picked out one example from a few years ago from a different realm was the Brazilian mining giant Vale, where they were disclosing their environmental risks. And they had said, we take environmental risk very seriously, and we have the best environmental and safety controls in the business. Now, that was not true. In reality, there were corrupt officials at Vale who were building dams at their mining facilities in Brazil with false safety inspection documents, false certifications, and they suffered disasters where the dams collapsed and killed hundreds of people. And Vale ultimately wound up facing criminal prosecution for that. The SEC then tagged along after the fact, after Vale executives were looking at manslaughter charges and the company paid billions in fines. Along comes the SEC at the end that said, well, Vale, you were telling people that you had the best possible environmental controls in place to govern your risks. And that was misleading because you didn't. You had this gigantic mess that happened where hundreds of people were killed in a mining disaster. So here is your misleading disclosure investment, investor protection civil action that we're going to impose, the SEC. And they fine Vale some millions of dollars. How would that sort of enforcement work with AI? You, a company, might be disclosing a risk that we use AI to decide the pricing of our product. And there is a risk that we might miscalibrate our AI or govern our AI too poorly, and it will make bad decisions about pricing for customers. And then if you do suffer some consequence like that, the question from the SEC would be, did you disclose those risks about AI in sufficient clarity or not? What if you say we have the best AI controls in the business? And then 3 years later, it turns out the AI had been making pricing discriminations against Black customers or older customers or younger customers, and you didn't know that. That would be misleading statements about AI. And then the SEC could swoop in and say, you were engaged in AI washing. That is how it would look at non financial companies or these non investment advisory firms. And that is what worries me is that right now we don't know all the proper ways to govern artificial intelligence. So you might say in the annual report or in some statement about, I don't know, you might post on your website or in some sort of sustainability report that, we use only the best AI and we govern it so closely. And then if you suffer an AI mishap of some kind, that's going to be your misleading disclosure risk, and you could wind up with SEC enforcement.
Matt, last week we talked about the SEC climate reporting rule in the context of a discussion around a unified theory of risk management. And does this discussion we're having about AI risk reporting, really should that be a part of an overall strategy, risk reporting or risk management strategy, or is this just one more type of risk that should be considered?
Well, it is one more type of risk that needs to be considered. So you do need to think of it, as I said last week, in that grand unified theory of risk management. I think it begs an interesting question here, Tom. Is an AI risk a cybersecurity risk or is it not? Um, because clearly it kind of, sort of could be a security risk if you don't have enough protections around the input data and somebody poisons the input data to make the AI make bad decisions. Well, is that a cybersecurity failure or is it an AI governance failure? Is it both? Is it something else? Um, I don't know yet. I look forward to the fact pattern for the SEC to make an enforcement decision and sometime down the future that lets us talk about it. Um, but on the other hand, you would want as a company to think through how do we assess what our material risks of AI are, or the material risks of our use of technology. You could have material risks of poor spreadsheet controls. That happens. Companies will disclose in their controls and procedures footnote that we have poor controls over our spreadsheets, over our ERP Oracle software. So we're not sure that our financial statements are right. Well, that's a technology risk you disclose. Is AI going to be a separate sort of a risk than a technology risk? Because isn't AI just another technology? I'm not saying you should put it in the controls and procedures footnote, but you should maybe put it in like the management discussion and analysis or in the business risks section or something like that. But think through, how do we assess what's material? How do we know that we're making the right judgments? How are we going to control these material AI risks that we've identified? Um, and yes, to your original question there, is that the same thing you should do for environmental risks, cybersecurity risks, supply chain risks, corporate culture risks? Yes, you should. And it really is about governance and making sure you have the right risk management practices and principles in place.
What about the compliance professional who finds out Wednesday in a short meeting with the CEO, this risk is now under the tutelage of the compliance function? Who do you think he should go talk to within the corporation to begin the process of a risk assessment? Is it IT? Is it the CISO? Is it legal? Is it someone else?
Well, you could probably go through a checklist of who would be somehow responsible for or involved with AI. Number one would probably be the chief technology officer. Do you know that people in the business are doing this? How are they using AI? Have you taken an inventory of all of the AI apps that are running on our system? You would certainly want to talk to the head of information security and talk with them about how are we governing the data coming into our organization to make sure that the AI is not poisoned. And data poisoning for these large learning models is now a thing. And you have to worry about that. And in theory, a sophisticated attacker could poison the data to turn your AI down the wrong path. I also think that the people you should talk to are business units in the first line of defense who are actually using AI. Is marketing using it to write up marketing copy? Is the R&D team using it to conduct some sort of new research? You might want to talk with the IT team. Are you using this to write software code? Anybody else who might be using AI to do a better job at their routine business processes or routine tasks? And you'd want to probably talk with legal and say, these are our legal and compliance risks that we have, regardless of if the humans are doing it or the AI is doing it. If they do it wrong, these compliance risks then follow. So, how do we set policy then to make sure that if it is AI doing it, we don't have these compliance risks still? Um, you could think of it this way, that let's say you're using AI to monitor suspicious transactions. You're a financial firm, you have AML, money laundering compliance risks. You want to use AI to study suspicious transactions and transaction monitoring. Great, sounds awesome. Picture perfect sort of use case for AI, except the more data the AI gets better, the more data it has. So, how are you training the AI to not use certain data maybe it shouldn't? Or if it's going to be using personally identifiable information for a customer, in some jurisdictions, you can only use it once. And then once you've done it, you get rid of the data. You could train an AML analyst to think about that and anticipate those problems so they won't use the data. You don't really train an AI the same way. You implement data validation controls at the beginning so it doesn't accidentally scoop up data that it shouldn't, or it deletes the data right away. We've gone from training humans to reprogramming data with controls. Radically different shift in how you govern the risk once you've gone from the human to the AI. And we could spin up use cases like that and challenges and complexities all day long.
Well, I wanted to take it in a little bit different direction to talk about another podcast where we discussed the Rite Aid case, where the pharmaceutical company was using software in its visual monitoring system for customers. And I think we both found that there was a bias in the AI, but more than simply bias in the AI itself, there was a lack of training and a lack of monitoring
Yep.
of employees who were using it. So there was misuse as well. Does the risk management of AI, would it include not simply assessing the AI risk for inherent bias that might be in it, but once again, after you've implemented that policy and procedure to monitor whatever your strategy was and make changes as appropriate?
Yes, really. So AI is still as sophisticated as it is just a tool. Even if it does replace some human tasks and roles, ultimately, there is still going to be some human who uses the AI to do a thing. So, in addition to monitoring and testing the AI itself, does it have the right data? Is it giving us our proper results that we want? And you can't really audit or inspect the AI code because nobody really knows how to audit these things anymore. The software code is too complex. In addition to all of that, you also have to think about how are the humans using this? How are they using it after the AI gives them a result to do something? The Rite Aid example is a very good one, that the employees were not really trained on how to think about what if the AI gives me a false positive for a potential shoplifter. They were only trained that when your phone goes off and the AI tells you that dude on aisle 6 is a shoplifter, go intercept them, you go and you intercept them. And there wasn't enough training to think about what if this AI gives us too many results that clearly are erroneous, or that it tends to bias towards one minority group, which it generally did when the Rite Aid example. You have to be thinking through, is the tool itself working properly? And have we trained the humans on how to use this new tool properly? Two different but related things, both of them very important for your compliance success.
Matt, can we circle back to where we started with the SEC enforcement actions? I didn't see anything in either one of those which would indicate how the SEC became aware of these. As you noted in your opening remarks, the information about the AI washing was pretty much put out there publicly by both of these firms, making claims that they couldn't back up. So if you're in the financial investment world or advisory investments, and you're publicly stating this, I guess you're fair game for the SEC.
That is true, and you're right that we don't know exactly how the SEC heard about either of these cases, but I suspect, or at least I think that in the future, the SEC and other financial regulators will start asking about this as part of their routine regulatory examinations of financial firms, broker-dealers, investment advisory firms. There is an entire examination division at the SEC. I would die of surprise if they are not asking about artificial intelligence and how you, investment firm, are or are not making statements about it. Can you back it up? That's the sort of thing that the SEC examination division had been doing long before AI, whether it was crypto or greenwashing or whatever existed back in a fad, in years before. So that is probably one way that regulators could bring this to the surface. And then if you had been making misleading statements, you could be in for an unpleasant time.
Well, Matt, that seems like a good place to put a bow on this episode. I can't wait to see what next week brings us.
Thank you, Tom.